Hi everyone. So today's agenda is to see how to enable the state and country pick list values in an OR, translate those values, and then finding out if we could deploy those values through Visual Studio Code or not. So let's quickly begin. Now, first, let me give you a gist here of what are we going to achieve. So the standard address field that we have, right? That's a compound field. Now, in that address field, we have two fields. One is state and one is country. Like you can see on my screen now, I am on the account record page while creating an account, and I can see the state is a text and the country is a text. Now, what if I want this to be picklist field? So for that, Salesforce provides us with the standard option to convert this text field into a pick list field. So the values of all the countries that exist and all the states within those countries that exist are already provided by Salesforce. So we just have to see how to enable that feature. So let's quickly start. So first of all, I went to setup and I typed state and country pick lists. Okay, it takes us here. So I would say configure states, countries, and territories. That's the first step. Default country, if you want to set any default country, you could. If not, it's fine. Now, which all country do I want to enable? If I activate all of them will get activated. So let's say let's not activate all of them. Let's only activate 3 countries. Let's say Canada, India, and United States. Let's save it. Okay. Default country territory was saved. Changes to countries and territories were saved. Okay. Now, within those countries that we selected, let's say we want their states enabled as well. So I'd go edit. Now, if you don't want all the states, you can uncheck some of the states if you want. But let's say I want all the states of Canada. So I'll select everything. And if you want to add something new, you could click on new state and add it. Then I'll save it. Similarly, let me go back. Here we have the countries. Sorry, just 1 minute. Let's say I am also going to United States. Now, I don't want all the states of US. So let's say here you see some of the states are activated and some are deactivated. Let's say I would deactivate some of them again. I don't want these states. Okay. Let's say I disable them and let me save it. Okay. Now going back here. Okay, now we have set up the countries and the provinces within the countries as we wanted. Now let's go back, one step back. So the first thing is something that we have done. Now the second step is scan for state and country or territory data. It means if you have any account saved with some data in it, which is like you have entered an account wherein you have filled the state and country, then it is going to ask you that let's say if I filled the text field with India, then it is going to ask me that I want to replace that India with which pick list value in my state and country pick list. Okay. So I'll scan for that data. It's doing the process. So it has completed the scan. Now let's go back. Convert the identified data. This is that step where I told you it's going to replace that text value with one of the countries or state values in the pick list. Okay. Now you see here, I might have entered an account with country as CA. Now, with what do I want to replace all of them? So let's say by default, I'll replace all of them with Canada. Okay, so I select Canada here and save to change list. So all of this got changed from CA, France, India, so on to Canada. I would do a next. Now here we are in the states values, right? So let's say all these states that I've marked, which one I want to replace that with. So again, I'll select all the states. I'll select everything. Now I'm going to change it to, let's say, Ontario in Canada because that makes sense, right? I selected country as Canada, so state also would be something from Canada. Let me save it to the change list. So now you can see all the old values will get replaced with Ontario. Let's do a next. Now it's asking us, can it finish and enable the pick list? So first I'll just do finish. So we are done. Now we'll finally enable pick list for address fields. So it recommends us to do it on the off-peak hours so that no one gets disturbed with the changes that are happening. Let's again scan. For any values. I think I got an email saying that the scan is completed. Now, let me refresh and let's check if this got enabled properly. So let's go and create a new account. Now I am on, you can see account, but this time the billing country, instead of being a text field, is converted into a pick list value. Now, the values will differ based on the country in the state field, like you could see, and this is something that I have not configured. It is automatically done. Let's say if I select India, then all the states of India are going to be displayed. So this was our first step to enable the pick list. Now, there are certain orgs wherein you have enabled multiple languages in your org, right? So our second agenda is like when I did this thing, I was doubtful whether we could translate the values of all the countries or not. So then I found out that yes, you could translate the values of countries and the provinces. And how could you do that is using the translation workbench. So first let's go in the setup. I'll show you from the scratch, disable it. You need to type translate in the search quick find. Here we are in the translation language settings. You could go and enable it. Once you enable it, it asks you which language do you want to enable for which user. So I did edit for French and I added all the users in my org. I wanted to enable it for and just activated and saved. Now let me again go to the translation workbench. So what you need to do now is there is this thing called address country. This is the same thing that you could use for that standard country and state pick list values. So I selected French and I selected address country. That is what I want to configure. Now, let's say this one. Okay, let me translate this into French. This is how they write this country in French. So let me translate this in French and let me save it. Okay. Now let's go to the state. So coming to the state translation, here are all the countries, and when you like open the drop down, you see that all the states of that countries gets opened up. So let's say I want to translate British Columbia. I'll go and add that, and New Brunswick. Okay, that too we'll translate. Okay, and let me save it. Okay, so the changes are saved. Now the next thing that I'm going to do is I'll go to my own user. And I'll change my language and locale as French so that we could see the changes. Like you could just change the language also, it's fine. Okay, now my language is changed to French. I'm creating a new account here. You could see every button and everything is like translated in French. Now this is the address. Now the island that I had translated, I have not unfortunately kept it in this list, but you know that we have translated two states of Canada. So British Columbia was the one. So now you see it is translated, and New Brunswick was the second one. So you see even that is translated in French. So this was our second agenda to translate it. Now, our third agenda is how to deploy the standard value set translation. Now, why did I say only translation is? Because there is some limitation when it comes to deploying the standard value set. Now, what is it? I'll tell you. First of all, how do you retrieve the standard value set, country codes, state codes, and the translations of it? So this is the syntax in the package.xml, address, country code, and state code in the standard value set. And in order to retrieve the translation, you need to say standard value set translation and then the same the address, country code and state code. But with it, you need to add the language code as well. For example, I want to get the French translation, so I've written FR. Now, right now, you don't see the standard value set and translation folder. After I do a retrieve source from org, you'll be able to see it. You see now the two new folders got created. Okay. Now, this that you see here, right? That is CA is the code and Canada is the label of the country. Now, let's say I come here. So this use the country territory code CA. That is that full name tag that we had over here. And label is something which is present over here, the country or territory name. Now, let's say I want to change this code to a new value. Let's say I want to make it a 3-digit code. So I'm changing it this way and I save it and I try to deploy it to the org. It won't let me do that. First, let me show you the error and then I'll explain it. I get an error saying duplicate label called India. There might be errors for others as well on the top, like if I scroll upwards, but anyhow. So why do you get this error is because this IND, CAD, and USA, now it is treating them as new values. So it thinks that I am adding 3 new countries. But when it sees the same label, let's say Canada, India, and United States, it is complaining that you are putting the duplicate label for these new values. So in short, because it is not going and updating the same old CA into CAD, but it is entering two values now, CA which is already existing and CAD which we are trying to put. So we cannot change the code from here. So let's remove this. Now let's see if we could change the label. Let me save it here. Now let's say I am going to change the label from Canada to Canada 1. Let me save it and let me try to deploy it. It will deploy, like there'll be no error. Okay, so it deployed this Canada one successfully. But what will happen is, let's say I refresh it. I do a hard refresh also. Let me do a inspect and empty cache and hard reload. Still, it is not going to reflect the change. That is what happened. That is what I have observed. You can comment and let me know if this happens with you also or not. I think it should. Universally, it should happen this way. Now, let's say if I edit Canada, it has not changed. This is the value I previously entered, but whatever. But see, this Canada one that I had put did not get changed. So let me save it. So here you see, even though it got deployed successfully, but it does not reflect those changes there. Now I remove Canada one. Let me save. Let me deploy. There will be no change in the org if you see. Again, if I do cancel and I refresh, I go and edit it just to see the change. So it doesn't change. But let's say I put Canada 9 from here and I save it. Now here when I'm retrieving the code, right? Let's say, let me retrieve source from org. It is going to show me the change. From org to my Visual Studio Code, it showed the change. But if I make change in the Visual Studio Code, CLI, and I try to deploy it to the source org, it won't reflect the change. Let me go there and show you. Let's refresh actually. You see, it's still 9, whereas I changed it to 10 from here. I deployed it also, but it didn't go across. So that's what happens. So that is why my agenda was to only show how you could move the translations from one org to other. when I had a requirement that in one of my project that I had to change the integration code value. As in, what am I talking about is this value. I did it manually in my org and I did it across all the org as a post-deployment step or a pre-deployment step as you wish, because this enabling and all as it is, you have to do it manually. But now let's coming to the translation. Let's say I want to deploy the translation for each country. How can I do that? So we have retrieved the translation as well, right? So let's go to the state code here. So you see New Brunswick and British Columbia, both of them are translated. Let me search for it. Here you see it got translated. Now let's say we want to also translate one more state. Let's go to the workbench, like translation thing. And let's check out our states here. Expanding Canada. Let's say Newfoundland and Labrador. That's what I want to translate. I hope the spelling is correct. Labrador, it is okay. Let me copy this French translation. Let's say I'm trying to move it from my Visual Studio Code. I don't know why. Okay, here it is. Because the case was different. Okay. Now let me put the translated value here and let me save it. Once I deploy this to the org, okay, successfully deployed. Let's go back to our org. Right now, only these two are translated. Now we should see the translation for this as well because we have deployed it. French translation, Canada. You see, now the translated value is present. So that is how you deploy the translation of the state and country pick list that you have enabled. So that's about it. If this video helped, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. Bye.